Let's go back to our devotional time in the book of Corinthians. We have come to the end of the book, and me and my family, I am the slowest reader. My son goes, by the time I finish one line, maybe he finishes 10. My wife goes about 5. I am the slowest of all. And it's very difficult for me to read fast. I'm actually handicapped when it comes to reading. But because of that, what I do is I read the introduction of the book and the conclusion. That's the way I usually go about. I start reading first I look for the author, who is the author, and then go for the introduction and maybe go for content, and then to the conclusion. And as you grow older, some of you who are younger, you will know that the older you get, the more you appreciate wisdom. And because you appreciate wisdom, you also begin to become a bit wiser. And you like to pay attention to what the man wanted to write in the beginning and what he was trying to say at the last moment. But when we are young, especially if you grow up under parents like me and my wife raising our son, the last moment is the most, how can I say, torturing. Okay, my son, do this, do this, do this. Okay, Mom, I know. And he's hiding his head here. You know, when your parents begin to give you instruction when you go to college, or some of you who, I don't know whether your parents were like that. Do this, don't do this, don't do this. And you just want to get away from them as far as you can, as soon as you can. When you come to church, it's glad the clock is behind here. You look, you count the seconds. When is this preacher going to end? Sometimes I myself have prayed, oh God, help him to finish. We do not appreciate lengthy discourse quite often. We want everything in short circuit. But here is this man, Paul, who has written a very long and heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, angry, sarcastic, rhetorical letter to this church. He wanted to restore some kind of unity and order in a church that was lost and confused and almost devouring one another. He wanted to bring them to the centrality of the cross of Jesus Christ, His sacrifice, His death, His resurrection, and how they should live in this world. And he's done it in lengthy discussions, and now in chapter 16, he wanted to close it. But even in closing, he touches in many, many things, like parents who will tell to their high school student who graduates and goes on to the university college, they will give all kind of advice, and you cannot finish. And then as soon as they get in the plane, train, bus, or taxi, we begin to start calling them. And that's what Paul's heart. A parent who cannot see his children being spoiled, a parent who cannot see his children miss the way, a parent who cannot see that the children missing their God-ordained destiny. So they will do all they can to help that child find the God-given destiny. Maybe child doesn't recognize at this time, but over time when that child grows old, he or she will begin to appreciate. And this is exactly what Paul is doing. In concluding 1 Corinthians, he has scolded them, he has given lessons, he has taught them. And now again, he touches some of those things. And I want to particularly focus a few things. And the title I said, A Lengthy Farewell and a Strange Greeting. In this lengthy farewell, he includes a normal greetings, but in this letter particularly, there is one phrase that is not found in anywhere else in his letter, and that is, anyone who does not love God be accursed. That's a greeting. It's a very strange kind of greeting. Paul is not a person who would use such a language to those whom he is ministering, but in this Corinth, after a lengthy farewell, he includes a statement of curse and says, to those who do not love God, let them be accursed, or curse will be upon them. That's a strange kind of greeting. Yet before then, let me first of all say a few things. First, he said something about financial contribution, something about offering in the church, something to do about the collection made on behalf of the church in Jerusalem. So in passing, he remembered, oh, I have to tell them this also. Or maybe they had asked the question and he had forgotten to address it. And then he picks it up again as he was about to say goodbye. And he starts like this. Let me read chapter 16, verse 1 to 4. Now, concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And when I arrive, I will send those whom you credit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. So the first farewell reminder to the Corinthian is about collection or financial contribution, giving for something here. And in this giving reminder, the purpose of this giving was the collection for the saints in Jerusalem. In those days, living in Jerusalem or in Judean province was not easy for the Christians. First, the Jews were hunting them down, and then later the Romans also began to hunt them down. On top of that, there was a terrible, terrible famine. And in the midst of that, there was a lack of perspective on the side of the believers as well. What they did was, after the day of Pentecost, they became so heavily minded that Jesus is coming soon, and most of them began to sell their property, their houses, their land, and bring the money and provide for the logistic to thousands of people who were coming there from different countries. So, because of this mismanagement and misunderstanding and the natural calamities and the political persecution, the church in Jerusalem and Judean province went through severe poverty, lack, and need. And Apostle Paul, as he was traveling in Asia and in Europe, he saw the prosperity and the blessings in those places. And he motivated the churches in those areas to begin a process of supplying the needs of church in Jerusalem. So he had told them to collect in Macedonia, in Galatia, and in Corinthian provinces, Achaean province. And now maybe they asked him a question again. You said this, what is it about? How should we do? And Paul is giving a few instructions here about how they should give in the church. Now, I know if you're a mature Christian, every time the topic of tithing and offering comes, you become so excited, right? You should be. If a person is a regular tither, I don't like to use the word tithe in a particular way. If a person is a regular worshipper with his or her finances, it reflects something of a spiritual maturity. Let me repeat that again. If a person is a regular worshipper of God with their financial resources, this reflects spiritual maturity. But if you're not consistent in giving to God, if you're not consistent in worshiping God or in glorifying God by your finances, it reflects your spiritual immaturity and inconsistency. And because of that, you also experience your spiritual inconsistent life oftentimes. Now it may sound harsh to you, but that is a biblical revelation given to us, and many of us are personal experiences. So let me just go ahead first in viewpoint here. The purpose of our giving, according to this passage and many other, is the people of God, saints. The purpose of your giving to the church is somehow, in some way, to affect people's lives. Whether you give it to the missions, you're giving it so that the people will come to the knowledge of Jesus Christ. If you're giving to a pastor, you're giving it so that this pastor will spend his life, his time, his talent to reach out to those who are in need. If you're giving to a certain church building project, you're giving to that building project so that this building project will be used in some way to train, to effect, to do something to the people of God. Any giving in the church should be for the purpose of helping the needy. Because in giving to the needy, you give to God. There is no giving to God without giving to the people who are in need. Jesus said, if you have given something to the poor, the beggar, the naked one, if you clothe that person, if you have fed the hungry, if you have given something to drink to the thirsty, that you did to me. But there is a danger sometimes that we think that we are giving to God without ever regarding the need for the people, the people's need. You may give to God thinking, oh, I'm putting in this box here, or you're sending through account or whatever, I'm giving to God. But when you give, my brothers and sisters, when you give, pray and say, God, let this be used to meet someone's need, so that through that person's life you would be glorified. So, first point I wanted to put across to you is that giving is the nature of God, and we are to imitate that nature, because even Jesus himself, according to Paul, said it is better to give than to receive. Now, that does not discredit receiving. You receive it not to keep it for yourself. You receive it so that you will be the instrument of giving to someone who is in need also. A person who is only receiving and never giving will stop receiving one day. But a person who is receiving, maybe you have a good job, you think you're earning that, but in reality you're receiving. Because of the grace of God, because of the kindness and the mercy of God, you had that physical strength and the mental capacity to earn that living. If some of you inherited your parents' property, that's because there was a grace of God somewhere controlling your destiny. If you have some kind of a good luck, as you say, or you had a break, or you got a bonus, you raised, you got promotion, or whatever happens, it is given to us by the grace of God. And because we have received everything in life from this amazing, graceful God, we are to imitate him even in finances. So the age-old saying goes like this: if you want to see whether God has touched your heart or not, check whether you're touching your pocket. If you want to see if someone's heart is touched by God, you will see if that person is touching his or her wallet. And Paul is asking these Corinthian churches to give for the saints in Jerusalem. Now, in the Old Testament, we have this tithing system. In fact, the Old Testament saints gave more than 10%. If you study carefully, they gave somewhere between 23 to 30% of their income. There are 3 different types of tithings, and all the purpose of giving was to take care of the Levites, take care of the poor and the destitutes, and to take care of their festivities or religious activities. One purpose was to take care of the religious community, the temple ministers. Another purpose was to take care of the needy and the poor. And the other purpose was to take care of the religious institution. In the New Testament, we do not have a certain set amount, but nevertheless, giving is an integral part of New Testament. Jesus could begin his ministry because there were women, influential persons who were giving their heart, their talent, their life, their time, and their resources. So the purpose is people never misunderstand. The purpose of giving is not that some church will build a beautiful building, they will be too proud, or some kind of a monument. It is what benefit will it have in the life of those who are being affected by this amount. Second, the instrument of giving. How do you give? Through what method do you give? And I think here Paul says in verse 2, on the first day of every week. That implies in the early church they began to worship God on early Sunday morning because that was the day Jesus rose. So in other words, the church is the instrument by which we channel our giving, or our ministry, our service. Church is the body of Christ. Church is supposed to minister to those who are in need. Church is supposed to be the house of God where people come from all different places. Church is supposed to be the instrument of God's healing. Church is supposed to be the instrument of God's comfort and love and compassion and forgiveness. And therefore, the local church ought to be the primary instrument. But that doesn't mean that you cannot help anybody else outside the church. That's not the limitation. But most effective instrument of God is when the people of God get together and determined to use it for the glory of God through various ministry of the church. So here he said, when you come together every week, store it up, put it together. So the first purpose, people, instrument church doesn't discredit you cannot give to anybody who is, you can give to anybody who is in need. God is looking at our hearts. And in reality, sad to say, modern church has failed to become the instrument of healing. It has become an instrument of controlling. And that is a sad reality. Money and politics combined together controls human lives instead of comforting. That is a sad reality, but nevertheless, church is supposed to be the instrument by which healing ministries have to go out into the society. And the frequency, how many times should you give? He said, every week when you come together, save it up. And in chapter 10, he had talked about how he, being an apostle of Jesus Christ, apostle of the gospel, he is supposed to be supported. He said, the one who lives by the gospel, preaches gospel, should live by the gospel. And he said, you ought to support me. And he then gives example how Peter and others are supported. I think that is also included in the ministry of giving. And they must have used offering like as we do today, they're collected every week so that they could minister to those who are living for the gospel and also to help the needy and the poor and the destitutes. Who is supposed to give? Who should give? Read again verse 2. On the first day of every week. So every Sunday we have these boxes here go around. When I was a young Christian, I had this naive spirituality that the day I did not have money in my pocket and the offering box comes, and if I couldn't put, it would break my heart. But as I grew older, I realized, oh no, it's not a kind of some kind of a mantra or some kind of a holy box that if I could put 1,000 here, then I'll be blessed or something like that. It is the heart. So from that day, the day I realized that sometimes I don't have in my pocket, so it doesn't bother me. But there was a time when I was a young Christian, if I should let this basket pass by me without me putting anything, there were times I even tried to pull out my button and put, so that at least people will say he's spiritual. On the other hand, I have seen people, they had manon, what to do with this manon? I want to put chanon. So they put manon and very quickly they took the change out of the basket as well. And also I have seen church members coming from a Hindu background. You have to know that in Hinduism also they have such kind of offerings. There was a grandmother who was giving offering along with her grandchild. She took a small amount of money and then she rounded about the head of the child because she hoped that God will bless her child, and then she put in the offering bag. This every week's on, when the offering bag go around you, they don't have some kind of a spiritual power to prosper you if you put something there. It is here. How often you should give? As many time as you can. Then who should give? That's the next point. Who should give? And look at verse, each of you. That leaves none of us out. Each person in the church is supposed to give to God. There is no excuse for not giving to God. Maybe you don't have money to give, you have time to give, you have talent to give. Something is there. You can give. But this is talking about money. So how does he qualify that? Each of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper. That means in other language, according to your ability, according to your income. You should give according to your personal ability. God is not that taskmaster who wants your money or something like that, but Bible says give according to your ability. There is no minimum amount, there is no maximum amount. Look at the story of Zacchaeus. He was a rich man. He had everything in life, but he did not have something that would truly satisfy him. So he heard about his friend Matthew living his profitable job. He heard many other things about Jesus Christ. And he heard even rumors that this man is truly the Son of God. He wanted to see him from a distant place. And he climbs a tree, wanted to see Jesus, but Jesus sees him first. Jesus calls him down. And Zacchaeus welcomes Jesus in his life, in his home. When everyone is at home having a good time, he must have thrown a huge party, invited his friends and neighbors. He stands in the midst of them and says, I give it all. Half I return to those whom I cheated. 4 times I will go and give it to them, and half I will give to the poor. And he lives a satisfying, fulfilled life. Me and my wife are watching these days a Korean drama called Wong's Family or something in Korean. I don't know. This is a beautiful, beautiful piece of literature or art portraying human proclivity from the most human stupidity to the most human nobility, the best in human being and the worst in human being. But the theme runs through that drama is that money is not the answer. Money is not the answer. Those of you who have, you know, but those of us who don't have, we don't know. There was a famous movie actor and comedian in our country. He's still alive. His wife died 2 years ago with sudden stroke. He was also quoting to another famous movie actor in America, the comedian in Hollywood. And this comedian in Hollywood was giving an interview, and he told in the interview, I wish that everyone in America would be rich and famous like me, so that they will all know that that's not the answer. I wish all of us would be rich and famous like me, so that they will know that that's not the answer. So if you're not giving to God because you don't have money, my friend, you're missing something. You're missing a lot in life. And therefore, each one of us, according to our ability, we need to bring an offering to God. Find ways to express your gratitude to God. Find some ways, find some people, find some institution, do something. Do something with your finances in which you dedicate that certain amount to God and say, Lord, I want to worship you with this. I admire one of my Bible college professor from Sri Lanka. He's become quite a popular person in India and in South Asia now. He influenced my life greatly. Last year, he wrote in his Facebook status, he was preaching somewhere in Indian state called West Bengal. He was talking about beginning his dream to begin a missions movement within his denominations, which is quite a large denomination. But he had no money to do it. In a rural community in Indian state called West Bengal, an old lady came forward with some kind of green vegetables, pumpkins and cucumber and all these things. And the price was about 40 rupees, which is less than $1. $1 is about 60 rupees in India. So 80 cents or something like that. She said, Pastor, use this vegetable to begin your mission movement in India and in South Asia. And he lifted that offering, and one young person from the audience said, I want to buy it with about 4,000 rupees. 40,000 rupees. And with that, in 1 year, this person began this mission program, and this year in August he is going to conduct one of the largest mission conferences, and he has already said this lady's giving has prompted so many people, and God has begun a miraculous movement of doing something in India. Similar story I read in Pastor Choyongi's book. When he was a young pastor, he was not the church that he is now at, a different church story. One rich businessman was doing business with an American company, and he donated about $1,000. It's about early 60s or late mid 60s. With the $1,000, this Pastor Choyongi began a church building, but he couldn't finish. He just foundation and the pillars. That's all. The church building left uncompleted for several months. After preaching and preaching and preaching for giving, all of them gave, and that's all they could do, a handful of church members. One day, one old lady who was surviving through the UN agency's food aid comes forward and said, Moksanim, I have this old brass bowl from which I eat. I have 3 things, he said. 1 cooking pot, 1 plastic bag, and this is the bowl that she would put rice and eat from. I want to give it to you to complete this building. And Pastor Choyongi takes this cup and begins to say, thank you, God, for this. And the man who had donated the most amount of money in the church was still sitting behind. He thought that he has given enough. So he had no guilty conscience. He had done all his part. All he could do is pray. But this lady came and said, this is all I have. This is the most valuable things in my life. And I want to give it to God. And that person bought that ball, again with a huge amount of money, by which he could finish the church building. And so in his ministry from there onward became so different. My brothers and sisters, don't wait to give to God until you have too much money to give. That's not giving. That's just throwing unnecessary leftover. Giving is when it really hurts. When you really realize, oh, this is really something I'm sacrificing. According to your ability, give to God. The purpose is people, never organizations or institution or some kind of dreams or vision, not some kind of a monument. It is always people oriented. And when you give, you must always pray, God, use this to touch someone's life. Instrument in church and the ministry and the pastors or whatever there are. And the frequency as often as you can. But as a church body, it is a weekly collection that is primarily helpful. And every one of us are to give. And the custodian of the giving, there is a responsibility for those who receive your money, your offering. If it is a church, the church has a tremendous responsibility of respecting your giving amount, honoring what you have given. If a person, that person has a tremendous amount of responsibility of being faithful, honest, and sincerely using it with fear and trembling. And Paul explains this. When you collect this offering, then recommend certain faithful people who will take this money to Jerusalem so that there will be no financial mismanagement. And if you want, or if it is possible, I also will go with them so that there would be no misunderstanding, no financial mismanagement. There will be no temptation for those who are receiving this. So choose the faithful people among you to take care of your giving. Utter faithfulness. A church leadership has to be absolutely faithful to God, honoring what the people have given. Jesus stood at the offering table. A rich man comes and with all kind of noise in his pouch. All right, he just pour out his offering in the offering box. But a poor lady also comes there with shame and disgrace, and somehow, fearfully, she puts that 2 penny, and Jesus honors that lady. It is a sad reality of Korean church that if you're a rich person, if you give money to the church, the pastors and the elders in that church will elevate you. But if you're a poor person, they're not going to touch you. They're not going to respect you. That's a reality. Not all churches, but this has been my experience in many places. So, church is responsible for honoring the rich and the poor, whoever they may be, when they give to God. That is so precious. The one who gives to God according to one's ability, that is so precious. And the receiving one must respect it. When I started ministry, until today, of course, I never have received my full salary for being a pastor. I've always worked this way and that way. And God has met my need in many different ways. Many people have come to contribute in my life. But before than that, my wife and I, we worked so hard so that we would not depend on anyone. One day, a very poor, in fact, the poorest members of our congregation came and contributed something to us and said, Pastor, this is for you. And it kind of shook me, and I was tempted to tell her, no, I don't receive, especially from you, how can I do it? But that's when God began to speak. You are an arrogant, proud person. You are too proud and arrogant, and you are hindering blessings in others' life. And from that day onward, I humbled myself. My wife still is very proud. But she has also come a long way. But I have absolutely humbled myself. I'm still proud, right? Saying that. I humbled myself. But I changed my perspective. Okay, that would be better. I am not still humble enough. But I changed my perspective that from that day onward, I will always honor and respect whatever has been given to me in God's name. So church, leaders, institution, persons, they have to be faithful to God in dispensing the offering that you put in this bag. Secondly, quickly, let me run through one more farewell statement and then, or two more actually. After talking about giving to God, now he says, respect your spiritual leaders. Many pastors, they cannot feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable to teach about giving. Maybe there is some kind of inferiority within themselves, or the church has some misunderstanding, because the moment pastor talks about money, they just think that church is after money only, but that's true. A pastor ought to teach his members about how to give. And then secondly, respecting spiritual authority or leaders. Let me just quickly read, and then you will see where I'm going. From verse 5 onward, I will visit you after passing through Macedonia, for I intended to pass through Macedonia, and perhaps I will stay with you, or even spend the winter, so that you may help me on my journey, wherever I go. For I do not want to see you now just in passing. I hope to spend some time with you, if the Lord permits. But I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a wide door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. When Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Now concerning our brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to visit you with the other brothers, but it was not at all his will to come now. He will come when he has opportunity. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. Now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanus were the first converts in Achaia, and that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such as these, and to every fellow co-worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanus and Fortunatus and Achaicus, because they have made up for your absence. For they refreshed my spirit as well as your. Give recognition to such people. Give recognition to such people. First, Paul. You have to understand that Paul is writing from Ephesus. And Paul was supposed to come to Corinth. And what happened is he delayed. There was a new opportunity opened up in Ephesus for the ministry, even though there was a persecution going on. And he could not come to Corinth on time. And the Corinthians were mad at him. They were slandering him. They were saying he's not an apostle at all. He says yes, but he doesn't do. He doesn't fulfill his promise. So they were abusing Paul, and that we will see in 2 Corinthians. So what Paul is telling, look, you need to respect your spiritual authority, your leader. They are God's servant. And the reason I am delaying is that I just don't want to come to you quickly and pass on. I want to spend time with you. I want to help you. I want to receive blessing from you as well. So you understand that I am not coming now, not because I am a careless person, as you say, but I have a door of opportunity opened in Ephesus, so I must take advantage of it. So I changed my plan, or I delayed my coming, but that doesn't mean I am not coming. When I come, I want to help you, and I want to receive help from you. But the Corinthians were not understanding that. He had to spend one whole chapter in 2 Corinthians to explain why he did not come. They were still accusing him. In fact, they say he's no apostle at all because he didn't come. That is not respecting the very man who founded the church. That's a sad reality in Corinthians. Secondly, Timothy. Now we all know by tradition and by the letters Paul writes to him, Timothy was a faithful servant of God, but he had some kind of handicap situation, that is timidity and youth. He was young and he was fearful. He was a faithful person, talented, capable man, but he was fearful and young. And now Paul is sending him to Corinth, a church that is about to tear him apart. And he said two things. He said, put him at ease. That means make him comfortable. Don't make Timothy's life miserable. You know, when a new pastor comes to church, the members will put him to the test. They'll make that person's life as much as miserable to know whether he is truly a pastor or not. So actually it takes 4 years for a pastor to settle in a church. Until that time, there will be all kind of a misery coming to him. After 4 years, the pastor begins to either earn the respect or he had to leave that place. So here is Timothy just passing by, and they are determined to attack his weakness. He said, make him at ease. Don't make him uncomfortable, but don't despise him because he's young. I don't want to touch my own personal experience, but I have experienced despising, discomfort and all, many places. Particularly when I began the ministry in Nepal, I was the master of my own life. I was the boss. I had many others that I could make their life miserable, but when I came to Korea, I realized what it is to work under someone. And I realized what it is to be made uncomfortable. I realized what it is to be despised and looked down upon. Timothy was such a person, and Paul had to write to them, respect him. He is working for the Lord just as I am. He is a minister of the kingdom of God, so respect him, make his life comfortable, and help him to go on his way peacefully. Do not make his life miserable. The next is Apollos. Now we all know Apollos was a talented person. Opposite of Timothy, he was a man filled with self-confidence, wisdom, and eloquence was his weapon. And when he came to Corinth, he just wooed their heart and they just followed him like anything. And now he is in Ephesus, hiding. Paul tells him, please go back to Corinth. No, I don't want to go there. Timothy was a faithful man, but timid and fearful. Apollos was a talented man, but he was a very humble man. So, because of him there was a division. He didn't intend to do it. His purpose was to teach them, but it happened that they followed him and began to accuse Paul or Peter or something. Division came. Now he doesn't want to go back to. He said, unless they settle their differences, I'm not going. Paul intensely tells him to go. Apollos says, no, I don't want to go. So it is possible that they must be again criticizing Apollos. What kind of man? We did everything for him. We gave him money. We supported him. We were with him. But now he's not coming back. What kind of man he is? Again problems. He said, he will come when the right time comes. But I told him to go, but he's not coming. Apollos. Then he said, be watchful. Don't become so easily persuaded by this and that. Don't fall away so easily. Stand firm in your faith. Act like men. Be a man. There was a Russell Peter, a comedian. He always makes fun of Chinese. Be a man. That's what Paul says. Act like men. Don't be shifting your position here and there. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. If you welcome Timothy, do it in love. If you welcome me as apostle, welcome me in love. If you welcome apostles, do it in love. Anybody, do it in love. Because these men demonstrate godly characters. Though Timothy is a fearful and timid man, yet he is willing to risk his life and come to you. Apollos is a talented man. You liked him so much, but he refuses to come for the peace of the community. And now he talks about the household of Stephanus in Achaia, in Corinth, and his fellow brothers or members, Fortunatus and Achaicus. These were the first converts. And they were the one who brought letter from Corinth to Paul, or their questions. And now they will come back to Corinth. He says, respect men like these. These were the original members, and yet they maintained their faithfulness to God, their humility, their integrity. You know, as a pastor, if you are appointed in a new church, why does it take 4 years for that pastor to gain credibility or authority in that church? It's because the old members will refuse to give in to that. They want to control the church. But here is a household, and the many members, original members, Paul says about them like this. Now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanus were the first converts in Achaia, and that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. They have given their life. And last of all, he says, give recognition to such people. So what I want to draw out of is that respect your spiritual leaders that deserve your respect. Don't respect just because they are first members. Don't respect just because they are eloquent preachers. Don't respect they are so faithful to a certain party. Respect them because of their godly traits, godly character, godlike lifestyle. Timothy was a godly man, faithful servant, though fearful and timid. Apollos was a humble person, willing to learn from Prisca and Aquila. And this founding member of Corinthian church was still faithful to the gospel, to the original message Paul brought. And now still they are faithful in serving God. Give respect to these kinds of people. Don't give political respect. Don't give power-oriented respect. Just because someone is rich and famous and contributing a lot of money in the church does not deserve respect. Just because one person is the first founding member but always causes trouble doesn't deserve respect. Respect the faithful ones. In fact, the moment someone demands respect, that person should not be given respect. They doesn't deserve respect. These people have earned respect and recognize their life. Don't make their life more miserable, but recognize them. And last of all, he says, understand that you are connected. There is a universal brotherhood. In the lengthy farewell, after talking about offering and asking them to respect the fellow ministers and recognizing their ministry, finally he says, understand that we have a universal brotherhood. We are connected to one another. That he does through greeting. Let me read from 19. The churches of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Prisca, together with the church in their house, send you heartfelt greetings in the Lord. All the brothers send you greetings. Greet one another with a holy kiss. That is the intimate, personal relationship of brothers and sisters in the Lord. This is a church in Europe and there is a church in Asia, but they are connected together. There is a universal brotherhood. Sadly today, the body of Christ, church has become professional. It is no longer personal. The respect we give to our pastors, we give professional respect, not personal respect. But here, it is personal respect, personal greeting, personal fellowship. Several years ago, I was in Seoul leading the Yongnak Church Nepali fellowship. And I went back to Nepal, and when I came back, nobody bothered there. That was the first time I felt, wow, I'm in a strange place now again. There was 3 years I pastored that congregation, but when I came, nobody bothers. And in fact, after I go from this church and after I come back for 6-7 years, those of you who will still be here maybe, but the church administrator, I will be a stranger here. That's because ministry churches have become too professional, political. Once you're a CEO of this company, you're fired or you resigned, you have no place to come back there. That's what church has become now. But church is not supposed to be that way. Paul goes back many times to Corinth. Apollos goes back many times to Corinth. Timothy goes around. There is this universal connectedness. When you come to Nepal, I should feel that I have a member in my church, a family member. When I visit some other country, they should feel the same way. The place where I minister and I leave, for example, when I go back to Nepal, if the church in Nepal treats me like a stranger, it's very sad and painful. But that's what exactly the developed church is doing. It's become too professional, institutional, political. There is no personal relationship anymore. It's very sad. It's heartbreaking. That one day I was your pastor, and next, after some years, I come back and you don't even recognize me. It's so sad. Why is that happening? Because it is all about controlling, no more serving. Politics and power is all about controlling, not ministering. But church is supposed to be universal brotherhood, family, brothers and sisters together. This is Paul's greetings, in which he said, heartfelt greetings, greet one another with a holy kiss, and then last of he said, let there be curse on those who do not love God. Because without the love of God, life is meaningless. There is no blessing. It may look like a blessing, but it is not going to be a blessing. So shall I close with you at this moment and ask you to stand on your feet and think about what Paul has said in regard